Okay, we'll move on along to generational differences. Back in the 60s, there was a phrase coined, if you will, and it was generational gap. When you think about the generational gap, it was popularized in Western countries, and it referred to the differences between the younger generation and elders, especially between children and parents. And I would think at times, at least when I was younger, there was kind of a negative connotation to it. There'd be a circumstance, there'd be a conflict, and it was, well, it's just the generation gap. It was just accepted that it was that way because there was that gap. Well, really today, what we're going to roll out is, in the generational differences, is the ability for our associates, as in other training, to learn about the individuals we're serving in a more intimate way. So, with that, my introduction, we have a younger generation with vast differences in experiences, and it's just different than other generations. By understanding these events and their effects, we can learn how to better communicate with members of each generation and understand our own. So the purpose of this training is improved communication across generational lines. And I'm not sure I like the word generational lines because there's a defined line and we draw a line in the sand. But really what it does is it gives us a goal to move past what some would consider a barrier. And the lesson objectives would be understand the difference in generational values, identify common verbal behaviors, and effectively communicate with older generations and with younger generations. This is going to be geared towards our residents primarily, but what I also challenge you to do is utilize it as a tool for your managers to learn in greater detail on a more intimate basis, kind of the thinking and the philosophy of the different generations they work with to hopefully improve the communication. Let's just go back a slide, sorry. Okay, so we have the traditional or the mature, born between 1922 and 1945, which is a close makeup to our population. The baby boomers born between 1946 and 1964, Generation X, 1965 to 1980, and the Ys between 81 and 2000. And what's interesting about the traditionalist, they have been called the greatest generation. And they've endured a lot, some through and or the back end of the Great Depression, also World War II. These struggles shaped this generation into an independent and proud patriotic group. They also are generally more frugal and likely to place value on material possessions. The generation itself is one of privacy, as they've also been indicated or presented as a silent generation. Hardworking, their careers identify who they are. Trust, their word is their bond. Formality, written and oral communication is preferred. Things and personal possessions they hold close to their heart. So with this new information, how can we utilize this? And a couple examples of how we've utilized this is, for a period of time in our dining services, we would have residents say, those portions are too big. And I'd say, well, I understand that. Sometimes you say you like to have that concern as opposed to the other. But after a while, it got to me when I went through this training there's a value perception there. And interestingly enough, when we worked hard on adjusting our portions, so there weren't a lot of boxes going out, and or individuals felt that there was a value perception, we knew we hit it. Now, along with that and other strategic components during town hall meetings, providing a brief financial overview, when any large projects were incorporated into our plans and actions, we would review them. And based on the expense, what would the payback or what the savings would be? And by taking that core value and working through it in such a way that we communicated that we care about that core value, and look what we're doing about it. I think it was the category of Santa Marta's responsible management of funds. Santa Marta's responsible management of funds. We went up 8 points this year. So see the impact that you can make on focusing on one of these values. Trustworthy, hard work. Recently, we had some residents, and we have great residents, not just saying that Joanne's here, extremely, extremely supportive through some extremely challenging times. And I think Rick alluded to that. You know, trustworthy, hard work. Individuals were commenting on, wow, the service in the dining room, they did this. Or the housekeeping staff, they did this. And the comments would go on, and I said, do we recognize how do we get to that part? So what I did with the resident council is I actually presented some of our training courses, reviewed our training syllabus with them, also went through generational differences, as well as the 5 human truths. And it was wonderful to see the lights go on. It wasn't just that it was happening, but now the residents saw the hard work and that they could trust us with providing them the care and a positive environment. So again, utilize the tools in which positively affect your community, but in such a way that our residents recognize and value it because it's their values. I think we can do a better job. I feel I can do a better job, and I'm working harder to understand our residents. And if you take something with you today, I would ask you that. Now, I know we have resident surveys, we have town halls, we have meetings, but maybe just stop and in a different way. And what Rick and Tim were talking about are different ways to move from hospitality to service excellence. Now, hospitality is there. It's an industry. But moving to service excellence provides a more defined, sharper tip. Here, we have another tool that provides a specific definition and a new way at looking at how we evaluate how we serve our residents. Okay, baby boomers from 1946 to 1964. They're the largest generation, 80 million in the United States. And because of the size of this generation, the vast amount of competition for jobs and resources, the baby boomers are very highly competitive and work-oriented. You know, statistically, don't know the date of the research, but about 10,000 people a day turn 65. And we have those baby boomers moving in. So while we're concentrating today on the values of the residents that presently bless us in our communities, we also have to be looking forward for the generation that's coming up. That is, there are a lot of similarities, but there are a lot of differences. And we need to change, and we need to embrace them. And we need to be able to enhance the experience for the next generation that's to follow. Generation X, 65 to 80. Their generation was the first to be introduced to home computers and cell phones. Generation X are less motivated by career advancement than the previous generation, and many are skeptical of authority. Generation Xers tend to look forward to the past and have inspired the creativity and the retro movement. About 15 million Generation Xers in the United States. And then the Gen Ys, 81 to 2000. Because of their comfort with technology, many in the generation expect instant gratification and may seem impatient at times, but I'm also accused of that, so I think maybe that's just consistent across all generations. They also place a high value on environmental conservation, renewable energy than other generations. Generation Y has been shaped by the prevalence of technology and instant communication. Now, Generation Y also has a propensity to be multitaskers. We all can be multitaskers, but at times what we all recognize as multitasking, individuals can interpret that as a lack of attention to you. So what we would do with some of this information in training and recognizing that it's not right, wrong, or indifferent, it's just the environment that we grew up in, the influencers, if you will. And I don't have my phone with me, but I do this with associates when I speak to them. I say, isn't there a generation that at times you see walking around and doing this? And we all do that to a degree. But then recognize with that generation, we have to focus on how we communicate, how we articulate things. Do we provide them with scripting? Do we provide them in an environment where they're comfortable with eye contact? Do we provide the training that when a server is at the table, they won't have the propensity to stand behind the resident and ask a question, but more be focused in front of them so they can see our verbal cues? So that provides us an opportunity there to make that connection and work with those verbal cues, with that eye contact, with adjusting our communication and even scripting. What comes out of that is a perception and reality of I respect you. I respect you enough to learn what you value, and I want to adapt to you. We're here for the residents, and it's not unlikened to social styles. Social styles within itself provides us an educational opportunity, and you can stay on there, an educational opportunity to recognize what our own social style is. And I'm sure that everyone in the room has gone through social styles. And it provides us the opportunity to recognize, are we an expressive, an analytical, an amiable, or a driver? And that if I'm a driver, that's okay. It's okay to be a driver. But as a manager, I need to recognize those social style differences, be able to evaluate when I meet Mark to a degree as an individual that he reports to, what his social style is, and identify that. And then recognize it's my responsibility to flex to Mark's social styles. As an example, and if expressive is meeting with an analytical, as an expressive, I would sit down with that analytical, I would have an agenda, I would have a specific time set, I would have supporting information, statistical information that supports our ultimate goal. And if I didn't have to make a decision right there, that analytical is probably going to want to have some time to come to a conclusion, and/or you have to help them bring to the conclusion. Generational differences is a similar tool in a different way, which is really kind of an oxymoron. It builds on one another. Also, along with the training with generational differences, the 5 human truths. We talked about control. One of the conversations revolved around control. And when we talk about generational differences and the value in learning about our residents, we speak about control and the 5 human truths. And one of the 5 human truths is we all like to be in control. And when the associates are there and we talk about this, I bring it to from their standpoint. Don't you like to be in control? Don't you like to be valued? Don't you like to be supported? And then I ask who's driven today, and somebody will raise their hand, and I'll go and I'll ask them for their keys. And I'll take their keys and I'll say, you can't drive anymore. And everybody's kind of eyes will go, what? How did that feel? That's what some of our residents experience. And through our learning of social styles, through generational differences, and the 5 human truths, how are we going to help those individuals in that transition? And see how it kind of all works together. You know, I think the benefit in the training that we have done, as I've indicated, you know, the key indicators in the resident satisfaction survey demonstrate that this is important to our residents. So taking the opportunity to learn more about them, I think, provides us the next step in providing them service and enhancing their life experiences through our ability to adapt, change, and serve. I very much appreciate your time. If there is an opportunity and you do have questions that I can be of help, and or if you would like my talking points, if you give me a business card, I would be more than happy to forward them to you. And I wish you a great afternoon. Thank you.